My name is Jess Thorpe. I'm the Head of Research at Nimbus 90. And a really warm welcome to all of you for joining our webinar series in partnership with Telstra and Telstra Purple, Building the Agile and Adaptive Business. So for the final episode in the series, we're going to explore the acceleration of cloud. So challenging operating conditions have forced enterprises to increase agility, improve time to market, and enable new ways of working, for which we know cloud is an important vehicle. What we're going to do today is ask whether a strategy of cloud first is being overtaken by a broader trend towards cloud only. Now, to do that, I'm delighted to welcome three exceptional and very experienced panelists in this field. Phil Scully, CIO of Costa, Sarah Greasley, CTO of Direct Line, and Ian Sheen, Strategy, Transformation and Cloud Lead at Telstra Purple. So thank you to all of you for joining us today. So if you're watching and listening and you want to get involved in the discussion, please just add your questions to the Q&A box. We'll get through as many as we can. I really encourage you to do that as and when one occurs to you. So let's get started, because within the Nimbus 90 community, cloud strategy and specifically how to get the maximum value and benefit from cloud is a topic that's high on almost everyone's agenda. And I guess that's because how do you tackle disruption or disrupt and innovate without it? I think to begin, if it's all right, let's go back to basics. And Sarah, I'd like to start with you. Welcome. What would you say are the key reasons for adopting cloud?
So I think the key reasons for adopting cloud really fall into agility, right? So time to value, the ability to react, and I think COVID has shown that for all of us. Time to deliver new capabilities, so innovation, and access to ecosystems, right? So that ability to integrate and engage with other parties. It's not just a cost play.
Brilliant, thanks very much. Phil, to come to you, you've done, I think you know an awful lot about cloud. It's still a huge topic. Why is this?
Because people are still on the journey, and people are still coming to terms with the opportunities and benefits of using it. And I think Sarah's right, it's not just a cost play. I think 2020 has highlighted the pace you can execute if you have cloud rather than legacy data centers, the inheritance you get from picking up technology that's available rather than trying to create your own. That provides that pace and that additional capability. And I think people have started to realize that in significant chunks over the last 9 months through lockdowns and the pivots everybody's had to conduct in 2020.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ian, just to come to you for a bit of an introduction, any advance on that? Any other reasons for adopting cloud that maybe haven't been covered, or any one of the reasons you've just heard you think is actually more important than any other?
I mean, ultimately, it's the future, right? And I think continuing to operate within a restrictive, inward-facing world is not the way we should be acting within enterprises. And ultimately, the cloud is your route to expanding out. It's your route to flexibility, all the things that Sarah and Phil have already said. But ultimately, it's your route to interconnectivity. And too many companies are still trying to do these things themselves and running into the complexities that arise as a result of that. So ultimately, if you want to share and work with one another, you need to be on a common platform, and that is essentially the cloud.
So have the reasons for investing in cloud, have they changed in the past few months, or do you think that perhaps they have simply become more acute? Phil, maybe if I come to you first of all.
I don't think they've changed. I think they've become more acute. I think people are taking advantage of cloud far more to either accelerate an agenda or to pick up capability that maybe wasn't in budget, wasn't in plan, but is, oh, look what's also here. I think those things have been increasingly important, but I don't think it's shifted the agenda. I think people who were on the journey to cloud are accelerating it. People who weren't on the journey to cloud are trying to catch up with it. And people who have got to the cloud are taking full advantage of it.
Sarah, from your perspective?
I think cloud is not cloud is not the end in itself, right? I think what we've seen, and I'm sure Phil has also seen, is increased focus on digitization, right? And the quickest way to do that for many of us was by using what was already in the cloud and exploiting that capability within the cloud, right? So, but it's but that imperative and that drive for digitization, for straight through processing, is very much what has accelerated in the last 6 months.
And thinking about, I guess, is first a question to you, Phil and Sarah, and then Ian, please do chip in. But how integral has cloud and cloud technologies been to your businesses in terms of just the last few months and being able to I guess, weather and respond to the disruptions or the ultimate business stress test that you faced?
So do you want me to take that first?
Yeah. Thank you, Phil.
Yeah, look, cloud isn't the be all and end all. Just banging stuff up into a cloud and having a cloud capability is fascinating, but unless it supports consumers, people, processes, it's connected to finance systems if it's a commerce platform, or data systems if it's a consumer platform, it doesn't answer. It's not the silver bullet. It is a significant component of pace, of digitization, of connecting to consumers and the agenda that everybody's trying to accelerate against. But it's just one element, and you have to think about cloud in the round against your organization, either externally to internally or across your business areas and out into your partners and supplier ecosystem. You have to be connected to the cloud, not just stick something up in the cloud and hope it works.
So what would you say has been then the most critical thing? So cloud is this enabler. Is the most critical thing the business pulling in one direction? Is it being able to harness data in order to respond to disruptions of the past few months, would you say, Phil?
I think pulling the same direction and making decisions at pace, I think, has been hugely important. But I think everybody's speaking the same language, whether it's digital transformation, whether it's master data formats, whether it's the construct of the end process from click and collect, or sort of the e-commerce channels that everybody's been trying to open up rapidly through 2020. That common cause is hugely important.
Thanks, Phil. And Sarah, I can see you nodding there. So, I mean, the same question: to what extent has cloud and cloud technologies enabled Direct Line to really adapt? And if it isn't cloud, then what are those other things that have made your response successful?
So actually, I absolutely agree with Phil that this focus on, and we had an immediate focus, right, which was twofold. One was that we had customers, particularly travel insurance, right, who were, needed our help and support. So we had a huge surge in terms of people contacting us, but at the same time, we were trying to move our employees out of the office and to work at home, right? So that was the focth on purpose, but actually the technologies that then allowed that and allowed us to move quickly. So both were important, right? So both of that, that purpose, but also that ability to react very quickly and to scale up.
Yeah, I think I'd just add to that, Sarah. I mean, the cloud offers you the chance to try something fast, right? I mean, ultimately, there are lots of reasons to go there, but the cloud is basically a supermarket of products. If you don't know how to use them, you don't know how to put them together, or you're not in agreement on what things you want to buy, you'll end up with the same mess that you had before you went in. And ultimately, over the past sort of 9 months, or 10 months now, where you've needed to do something fast and potentially at scale to see if it feels right, cloud has been the place to drop in. Where you then go long term and how you connect that in with everything else that you're doing and all the other problems that an enterprise has, that's next year's problem. In terms of this year, The ability to access the same products from anywhere, so in terms of remote access, has been huge. That's certainly something we've seen with all our customers at Telstra. But also the ability to access things fast, try, and then move forward. We've certainly seen that with a number of customers, specifically in the retail space, actually, where they've been forced to adapt very, very quickly given the closures.
Yeah, thanks, Ian. I think that is a brilliant introduction to a lot of issues, and I want to pick up on a few of those later on, particularly the ecosystem point that you raised, Sarah. I don't want to gloss over that. But before we do, I think just to dig into, and I know that this is something that our audience will be very interested in, is to dig into kind of what some of the challenges are. As you said, Phil, everyone is on this journey, but this journey, I mean, there's a lot of stops. It doesn't always run smoothly, to continue with the analogy. Phil, if I may come to you, why do you think that cloud, well, either migrations or any sort of transition to the cloud, what obstacles are there in that? What are the typical challenges that you might face?
There's all clouds are not created equal. So, you know, if you've got to connect clouds or connect across clouds, it gets to be quite challenging. Connecting from a cloud to a legacy data center is quite challenging. And typically that falls on the organization to try and bridge the gap between the technical debt of modern cloud to, you know, 10, 15-year-old high street legacy retail systems. That's not a small undertaking. And then if you've got through all of that, we're a nation of hoarders. We hold on to our data without actually knowing why it's there. And we drag this great big anchor with us on these cloud migrations. And I think one of the things that 2020 has done is say, right, dump that. How do you get there fast? And you've got to make some of these fairly ruthless legacy calls about, you know, cutting it away. If it's adding no value to the business, it really can accelerate your move to the cloud, because the number of cloud programs that get bogged down in vast amounts of historic data or trying to make an old data model fit to a new cloud integration, they're tough challenges. And if you get it, even if you land it, you have to live with it and keep maintaining it, which adds cost and time and actually starts removing some of and eroding the benefits you trying to get to from moving in the first place. So those are probably the three big ones for me. You know, connect across the cloud, connect into legacy, get rid of the history, and go from there. Those are good accelerators.
Sarah, I can see you nodding. Are they the similar? Would you say that they're kind of your top three priorities? And is this ruthlessness? How do you exhibit this ruthlessness with respect to legacy? That's also what we want to know.
Yeah, I think I actually have a slightly different point to Phil, which is that there is a temptation to think that you can lift and shift what you have today and put it in cloud, right? And that actually doesn't solve the problems that you have today, right? All you're doing is literally changing the bottom layer, right? And the top is still there, and it's probably still a mess, right? Because it's been there for 20 years. So I guess it's that lift and shift versus change, which actually drives to why you are going to cloud, right? And if you're not clear on that, you may end up doing something that's suboptimal and actually doesn't really fix the root of the problem, which may be agility rather than cost, right? So I think clarity, thinking through what you're doing, why you're doing, and being very purposeful is really important as well.
Just on that point, Sarah, and Ian, do come in here, because I think you must see these challenges day in, day out, helping companies solve these problems. But with respect to clarity, markets seem to change very quickly, and cloud is there to help us react quickly. But when things are also changing at pace, isn't getting clarity really quite difficult, because things seem to move on once, you know, as you make decisions?
Yeah, definitely. I think the key point we all always miss out in cloud discussions is people. Ultimately, cloud doesn't make decisions, and technology doesn't decide for itself. People make decisions, right? And systems and enterprises evolve over time. And at some point, what started out as nice and clean becomes incredibly complex and difficult to change and port, right? And that's a people problem. And so when you actually start looking at cloud, People make decisions. I mean, the point that Phil made earlier about data, the classic analogy is if you use a pivot table in Excel, how many people select just a small amount of data? You select it all. You know it's going to be slow and clunky. In cloud, it's going to be expensive. In databases, select star. And the other side of things around data is a common pattern that happens with all enterprises is data moves around. Data gets replicated because the easiest way to design a new system is to copy all the data and then apply your own logic. And for years, we've been trying to clean that up, trying to build data hubs, trying to build data lakes. All these principles are exactly the same, whether you're in the cloud or not. The key thing is when you get to cloud, it costs. It costs a lot more money. And suddenly, so organizations are suddenly trying to do the same things that they've been trying to do for almost 15, 20 years, except they've had a nice ELA with a friendly organization who trues up once every 5 years, whereas a cloud trues up every minute, every day, every week. So they have to find a way to change the people. They have to give people the time to do it right because pressure leads to going back to or reverting to type. And they have to stick in for the long run. And the final point I'll make, and builds on the back of what Phil was saying, ultimately a cloud journey, the cloud isn't the destination. Cloud is just a platform, a product, a component. Your organizational change is your destination. But the final point is most organizations view it as a year. It didn't take an organization a year to create itself. And it certainly shouldn't take an organization a year to change itself. However, whenever an organization looks at itself and its cloud journey, it expects something within a year, and it really gets stretched on 2. These are all 5-year initiatives, and they should be viewed as such.
Sarah, Phil, do either of you want to chime in there? Sarah, I feel like to come back on some of Ian's points.
So I think one of the things that Ian is saying, right, which I really agree with, is this thing that says if you just do the same thing, you replace the underpinnings, you'll get the same issues, same challenges, right? And I think we're agreed on that. But it's that where cloud drives that agility, and I think is really important, right? So I can test and learn much more quickly. Right? I can show the business how this is going to change the way that they do things much more quickly than creating my Excel spreadsheet and showing them what the pivot is. Right? I can literally do it in real time. So it's that agility. That's when that really comes to the fore. When you've got a commonality of purpose, for us, the commonality of purpose is around that customer experience and enabling the customer. Phil's got the same customer experience, just a different type of experience, right? But enabling the customer to have a much more seamless experience, right? And it gives us more ability to do that more quickly, right?
Yeah, look, Jess, Sarah, I think it's a great point. And the point for me is cloud isn't a silver bullet.
Yeah.
Technology is easy to change, relatively speaking, to culture and habits. 2020 has taught us that you can change your habits, but sometimes that can be really quite painful. And the bottom line for any business is our consumers are changing their habits faster than our business users change their habits, right? And if you're banging everything up into the cloud, and then the first part of the process is download it all again to Excel to run your pivot tables, because that's the way you've always done it, you failed, right? It's not about the tech, it's about the habits, and you have to change habits. And the upside is that everybody uses the Amazons, the WhatsApps, the eBays, these cloud services. People understand them. Our consumers are on them every single day. We have to bring our organizations to those behaviors, to those habits. Our culture has to shift the way our consumers' habits and cultures have shifted. And the slower we are, the further behind we're going to be falling with our competitors, with our consumers, with our relevance. And that's the challenge that's ahead of pretty much every organization out there.
And that's actually one of the things that has happened, right, this year, right, is that cultural shift, right? Business people who have, been working the same way for 20 years have had to change the way that they work, right? And that's a really critical. That's driving a mind shift change, and we're moving towards agile in common with many organisations, right? But that mind shift change has been really important.
Yeah. It's hugely important. We're not using anything different than we've had available to us for years. Video conferencing as a technology has been available for years. It might have been polished a little bit. There might be a couple of new competitors like Zoom coming into the market that people are suddenly aware of. Technology is not new. Our willingness to use it, our need to change our habits, our demand not to commute has fundamentally shifted our consumption of the technology because our habits have shifted, not because the technology has suddenly voila'd itself in 2020.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Phil, right? I think ultimately, and I was talking about this the other week, which is this year has shown a commonality of purpose in business, in customers, out of necessity, and in IT. And if you'd roll back 12 months and ask for consistency of IT, customers, and business, everybody would have walked in 3 different directions. That's why defining a budget in every company is always a nightmare, because everybody's priority is different. Every IT person tends to have a slightly different view of the same problem, and the customer is moving at pace. This year just stopped that. There wasn't a question of choice. You either did or you weren't there. So if you look at the speed that people, and that's even before you start talking about security and regulations and everything else that wraps around it, you could either stand up an environment or you were out. There was no discussion about whether it was green, purple, or pink. It was there or it wasn't. And I think the key thing is when you go back to the cloud piece, a common thing that I hear all the time is simplification. And it's so bang on, because if you cannot simplify what you do, omni-channel is the other beautiful one. That just it's basically simplifying your communications framework with your client, but it sounds really special. Omni-channel is making it easier rather than using 10 different ways that are all special, right? So in order to move to cloud, and if you look at, let's look at the greenfield companies that have gone in there, they've often gone with a relatively simple business case. They've created something that's relatively straightforward, and they've done it exceptionally well. Enterprises look at themselves, and it's the easiest thing in the world to take a whiteboard and draw a cloud strategy. But then you've got to simplify in order to start it, right? It's very easy to write a financial business case for cloud, but then you've got to ensure that you keep up with it. So simplification, going back to why a lot of these applications, why a lot of these systems actually do what they do, why they exist, why the duplication exists, is the first point a company should do. Because ultimately, once going back to that supermarket analogy, once you go in there, you can pretty much have your choice of whatever you want. But if you've got 50 different types of recipe, it's going to cost you a lot more than what you had before you walked in.
Absolutely, thank you. We're gonna go in, maybe dig around a little bit into cost. I just want to bring in a couple of comments first of all, and this relates. So to cover this point off, this is from Philip, who agrees that the benefits of the cloud, they're not in doubt. But what he says is the main challenge is how we transition legacy solutions to the cloud and move away from these in-house hosted solutions, or connecting them and making them part of this wider ecosystem. So just to go back to legacy, is that really the biggest sticking point of the successful journey? Once you've defined your purpose, that is, would you agree with Philip's comment to the panel?
Yeah. Ultimately, the most expensive systems tend to be the legacy ones, because you've got to have specialist skills. They're often running on a lot of technical debt, which means you have complex support agreements and everything else. You have a lack of understanding around these systems, how these systems even work, and to some extent, why they do a lot of the things they do. The other side of things, they tend to have a lot of manual processes around them that an organization's got used to doing, feeding and nurturing the application. To unpick all of that and move to something shiny and new is not an easy process. But yeah, they are the most expensive parts of the platform. So you have to find a way, A, to simplify them, and B, to make them cheaper to run within the cloud.
Another comment here, and this is just on a similar point, and it relates to cost. And this is again from Philip with regard to the data comments. And I think the nation of hoarders, Phil, I'm totally going to steal that, because I think that's absolutely right with respect to data. Cloud providers are good at hiding cost, data movement costs in the cloud. So it has to be optimized, and architecture design, good integration fabric is key. And Philip agrees, yes, habits have to change. That is the hard bit. But sort of coming back to this issue, how do you resolve some of these challenges around cost? Is it, as you say, Ian, it is about having a long-term strategy? What are some of the challenges with managing managing the cost of moving to the cloud, and what happens once you're there?
I'll be very brief. I think you need to manage it. And companies aren't very good at managing money. So I'll leave it.
I would think of it like you're moving home. Think, if you're moving home, the first thing you do is usually throw a whole hell of a lot of stuff away because it's then cheaper to move. Why don't we apply the same principles to moving our legacy? Right? When you've got into your house, if you've got stuff building up, it's expensive because you're ending up in big yellow storage or one of these other places, or you need a lock-up garage, whatever your mechanism is, you have to offload, and there's a cost to that. Why don't we apply the same principles? So making those costs transparent, understanding the value of either keeping it, maintaining it, or the benefit of throwing it away, I think is crucial to the conversation. But that, again, comes down to how are you going to use it? What processes are you supporting? Where is the value? And why habitually have we always needed this? And go from there.
I think the other thing I would say is learn how to turn things off, right? Because we're not, as an industry, right, we're not very good at either it's kind of that last 5%, right, of a system or whatever. So we need to learn to turn stuff off, whether it's stuff that's old legacy and we've moved into the cloud, but also in the cloud environment, right? We are, and I continually say to people, if you do DR or if you do availability in the way that we do availability today, then that's going to cost more money, right? It's about actually it's about being smart about how you do things, right? And I'm also really I push people very hard to make sure we don't copy data, right? That's
a great point. It's a great point. And I'm going to go back to the house analogy because I think it's spot on. Cloud is a utility model, right? If you leave your lights on at home, a utility company doesn't phone you up and say you've left your lights on. They take your money, right? Apply the same principles. Cloud, if you leave cloud on, if you're running stuff you don't need, it will cost you money. And the cloud organizations do not phone you up and say, do you know that you're running this and you're spending a lot more money with us? That's not a conversation I have ever had. It's you have to own it. You have to own the conversation. You have to own the costs, and you have to own the mechanisms to control the costs.
The brilliant thing about cloud is I can spin up a test environment really quickly. But you have to remember you can also turn it off really quickly, right? I can turn it off at weekends, right?
Ian, is that something that you see? Sort of this is part of the journey. This kind of understanding about how to get the maximum value out of cloud, how to turn it off, that kind of thing.
Yeah, totally. And to build on the point Sarah just made, whenever a company is trying to reduce costs, search for the machines that aren't being used. They don't disappear because you're in the cloud. In fact, they become more. Because if something's easy to get hold of, then it's easier to forget you ever had it. So that's number one. And number two is a lot of companies still live by shredding models, cost models. Everything costs the same. They don't actually signal out, or the true consumer doesn't really get pointed out as to who is kind of doing the bad stuff. Now, the minute you step into the cloud world, that becomes very, very clear. Whoever consumes what gets the bill for it. But I think from a company's perspective, you have to get that mindset right in the existing environments. I was in with a customer earlier on in the year where they had a price per user model internally, and you had a consumer model within the cloud. And funnily, the expensive areas didn't want to move because it was dirt cheap and everybody else was paying. So until you change the mindset on what the cost model is, it's very, very difficult to then police it. It's as simple as that. So get rid of shredding and move to consumables internally.
Thank you. And Sarah, I want to come back because obviously what we want to talk about a little bit is you've got cloud first as a strategy, and whether we might see a broader shift towards cloud only, particularly given the acceleration that I think we've all acknowledged has taken place. But when is cloud only not the right option?
So we will so we strongly believe that there will still be scenarios where it's commodity or it's legacy, that the will move when there is a compelling reason to do that, whether it's end of life or whether it's a new way of doing business or something like that. We're not going to move just for the sake of moving, but it really comes down to having a clear understanding of where your cost drivers are. Actually, does this help sort of take away the Swiss cheese issue in data centers, right? Or something like that. So there'll always be, it's about being clear on your reasons for moving, being clear on what where the value is, but there will be things that are commodity that you kind of think, do I really need to move that, right? And we do have those conversations on a regular basis.
So it's not inevitable, this shift to cloud only. And I guess it depends, of course, what your estate and your legacy is like. Phil, thinking about retail, the level of disruptions and the pressures that retail is under, do you think in the whether it's 5 years, whether it's 10, do you think that a shift to cloud only is inevitable?
I don't know whether it's going to be 100%. I think it has to be down to what the value is for your business, if it's even possible to move it to the cloud. Some of these things, moving to the cloud is such a compromise on what you have as a business, what you do as a business, what differentiates you as a brand, that actually keeping it and retaining it and owning it somewhere off cloud makes more sense. But you have to follow, from a retail point of view, you have to be where the consumers are. Right. And if you're not, then chances are you're going to struggle. So I think the consumer drive to cloud services, to the consumption of commerce, collect, delivery, social clouds will ultimately drag and pull retail through to cloud technologies anyway. But I don't think it will be total for a while yet.
And what do you think? I mean, you've got experience of different industries, so and they all have slightly different characteristics. Where do you think cloud only may emerge more strongly? Any particular sectors or any particular reasons or rationales for cloud only becoming a more dominant trend, let's say?
Yeah, definitely. I think if you look at sectors where they already use large-scale shared services, right? So, I mean, ultimately, the high street is a high street. Everybody went to the same place. Out of town is now out of town, and there will be a cloud high street where you basically go and play. And to the point that Phil made, in terms of delivery, in terms of payments, in terms of those tools sitting behind, why would you not go there? I think the key question is ensuring there's competition with the cloud providers. Transport. Airlines use common tools, common practices, common products. Ticket management is all done centrally. So where there are shared services for you to click into today, there is no reason why those sectors won't. Areas that will take longer are the most complex areas that don't like to share. I won't look at Sarah from the insurance space, but these are areas that have evolved over time, right? And ultimately finance, where there is still a mindset of my tool sets are the best. It's all my own IP. There's a big move within the finance world to go open source, but who's really going to move? And they're all still looking at one another to see who's actually going to hand the crown jewels over. And the same in the insurance space. It's a very, very easy thing to say to share models. It's a very difficult thing to change those sectors' cultures.
So I agree. I think there's a culture thing, but I think it also comes down to this. There are some things that change very infrequently, right? And the differentiation and our ability to change very, very quickly is much easier in the cloud, right? And that's kind of reflects where we put some of the stuff we put straight into the cloud, right?
Absolutely. I want to take a question about people. We haven't explored this as much. We realise, as you've said, technology is there, but it is about what people do with it. And Pablo says, the people side of transformation, if it lacks spark, then you've only got kind of temporary solutions. What, have you seen this in your organization, that the people side has been the most challenging, and sort of what can you do about that, if anything? I don't know who wants to take that first. I mean, Ian, should we kick off with you? I mean, would you agree with that? That first of all, the people side of transformation, when it lacks spark, and this is to use Pablo's phrase, what might that look like? Why does that occur?
Well, transformation slows down as a result of people who are nervous about change, and people are inherently nervous about change. They're nervous about skills coming in, them getting left behind. So people, going back to Phil's point, will also hoard knowledge because if you are the only person who owns a system, then you're secure. And if you, in today's marketplace, people like to feel secure. I think in terms of transformation, again, 12-factor apps is a very easy thing to say, and it's a very easy paper to distribute. However, find the skills. So we have to find a way. There's a new blend or a new group or a new movement, if you like, that's in that space. And in fact, 12 factors is however long now, 5+ years old. It's not even a new phrase. However, the core of our enterprises skill sets are still not up to speed around those spaces, and they've not been given either the training or the time or the backing to actually embed those thought processes into an organization. So ultimately, a transformation stops because of two things: people or money. It doesn't stop because of technology options that are out there. So yeah, I'll heartily back Pablo.
Phil, to come to you, dealing with the people side, and as a CIO, as a leader, you understand the benefits, you can communicate the benefits, but living and working in an agile environment and everybody being able to do that is a real challenge. So how do you manage that tricky people element?
We're all people, right? So ask yourself the same question: what's in it for me? Like, put yourself in that person's shoes. What's in it for me? Do I work smarter? Do I have less manual processes? Do I have to print off less stuff and get up and move to the printer and get, there's a load of things that trigger people. Is my job less frustrating because all of the information's in one place? There's a whole load of benefits to think about. Am I more relevant skill set wise because I can currently use a financial cloud rather than the legacy system that only my business ever uses? There's a load of things that people like to know, want to know. If you listen to them about what makes their day better and what makes their day worse, and respond to some of those things, some of those frustrations, then most of the time you have a much better conversation. I'm not sure what spark looks like for some people, but for me, if you've got that engagement, if you've got that what's in it for me question answered, it makes a massive difference. Because unfortunately, people are change resistant. People do look at technology improvements equaling job reductions, and it's not always the case that we have to have those single track conversations. There's a load of other avenues to take this.
Absolutely. Sarah, I'd be interested in your thoughts. What does this move to this agile culture, the people issues at Direct Line, what does that look like?
So I think the thing about the move to agile, right, which we're seeing is that people don't feel that they're constrained to move from doing to managing, right? So people's ability to be valued for the depth of experience, right, as well as the breadth, clearly, but depth and breadth is much higher, right? And so what we're seeing is, and we spend a lot of time talking not just about behaviours but about values, right? And actually, it's people aligning with those that helps to drive the change. But to Phil's point, it takes time, right? We've transformed through virtually, right? And in some respects, that virtual transformation has actually forced us to really, really focus on things like behaviours and keep iterating, right? Keep iterating that discussion, because we've done it all remotely, right? And that's been really, it's work in progress and it's a journey, but we're moving forward.
Absolutely. And I guess, I think we had a comment that people are in learning mode at the moment. So perhaps some of these transitions are easier to make given the present conditions. Just to look. Oh yeah, sorry, over to Phil.
Sorry, don't underestimate your people. Don't underestimate the capacity for your people, your teams, to adapt and to change. Like, don't underestimate the fact that they're all out there using Amazon, eBay, Apple. They connect to these technologies. These technologies update daily, weekly on their phones. Use that. Don't underestimate them. That their capacity for change and adaptation and adoption is probably far higher than most organizations' capacity to deliver it. You just got to unlock it.
Absolutely. Ian, one sort of last question to you as we're running out of time, but where can this acceleration of cloud adoption take us? I mean, what are some of the possibilities? Are we looking at more automation? The ability to harness AI to deal with all this data that we're hoarding? What's your view on what the near-term future looks like?
Wow. What's the near term? I think. What do I think? I think this year has driven a culture of collaboration within organizations. And I think it will, in the future, look to drive a culture of collaboration between organizations. And I think, that's where the world is going. And, you only have to look at, and I hate to use the COVID term, you only have to look at the vaccine stuff. Why would you go back to running 50 different ways of doing the same things? If you work together, you can save money and deliver quicker. And I think, within sectors, some will move faster than others, but the drive to build common platforms within the cloud is only going to grow. So, a lot of people still talk about cloud as IaaS migrations. They still talk about it as data centers. That's how this conversation started, and rightly so. But a lot of organizations are still talking about that. Where the marketplace is going and the world is going is actually platform level and companies sharing components.
Sarah, over to you. I can see you nodding.
So, sorry, I've got, this is a bit of a soundbite, right? So from ecosystem to ecosystem, right? And sorry, but it's not mine. I'd just like to not own that. But absolutely, that collaboration, right? That's the future, right? This ability to work together to deliver something is really going to come to the fore, I think, in the next in the next year or so.
And Phil, lastly, from you, thinking about where some of the possibilities and where this might take us, do you see greater platformization of industries and collaboration, as Ian says?
Yeah, for me, I think better sharing. I think that ecosystem is starting already with partners and suppliers that have had to connect through 2020, that probably were picking up phones or sending paperwork to each other, and now trying to digitize that as quickly as possible, and that will just extend and grow. I think for me, it's about ownership, owning your brand digitally, and making sure you're collaborating appropriately with partners, with consumers, is going to be the next stages. Whether you say that's because of security or regulatory requirements, whether you say that's because of your brand proposition, I think that ownership first and foremost is crucial.
Brilliant, thank you. We are out of time. We always get to the end. There's so much more we could have talked about, but I would like to thank our panelists, Sarah Greasley, Phil Scully, Ian Sheen, for a really in-depth discussion. And thank you to the audience for your time and your insightful questions. So this episode concludes our series, Building the Agile and Adaptive Business. On behalf of Telstra and Telstra Purple and Nimbus 90, thank you for watching. You can catch episodes 1 and 2 on Bright Talk or YouTube. And if you have any thoughts or questions, please do contact Telstra or Nimbus 90 for any information at all on any aspect of today's panel. Thank you once again to our panelists. That was an excellent discussion, and thank you to listening. Bye-bye.